CurePSP is the foundation for prime of life, neurodegeneration, a spectrum of
incapacitating and incurable diseases
with debilitating motor, cognitive, behavioral, and emotional symptoms.
These afflictions often strike in middle age when people have careers,
family responsibilities, and active lives.
So they include progressive supranuclear palsy, which is also known as PSP, corticobasal degeneration or CBD,
multiple system atrophy, MSA, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, and others.
The mission of CurePSP is care, consciousness, and cure
for devastating prime of life neurodegenerative diseases.
My name is Michael Draper, and I have multiple system atrophy.
Hi, my name is Jim Britton, and I have CBD.
I am Edna Montano, and my husband Nigel suffered from progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP.
My name is Linda Phillips, and I have PSP.
Gracias por acompañarnos.
आप सबका आभार, शुक्रिया, नमस्ते.
Thank you for joining us.
Hello and welcome to Hope as Big as Texas, a celebration of Hispanic heritage and hope. And I thank you for taking the time to join us. It's my honor to join this event for the second year in a row. I hope you enjoyed the pre-event mix and mingle. Please let us know where you're watching this program from. I'm coming to you from my hometown of San Antonio. And I hope there are other Texans out there who are watching from other areas and people who are watching from outside of Texas that we will make honorary Texans, at least for tonight. I would like to thank the many volunteers who worked tirelessly to organize this evening's event. Your hard work and dedication is greatly appreciated by Texans and honorary Texans everywhere. Tonight's event is an exciting and virtual celebration, exploring the wonderful connection between caregivers and artists. This year, Hope as Big as Texas 2022 takes place at the beginning of National Hispanic Heritage Month, a time to highlight the achievements, contributions of Hispanic Americans by celebrating the histories, cultures, and contributions of Americans whose ancestors came from Spain, Caribbean, Central and South America. Those involved continue to advance communities across the country and to inspire others to do the same. Tonight, we're going to explore a little bit the common language and the connection between caregivers and artists. What is that common language? What is that connection? Well, it's creativity and commitment and empathy. Our speakers will discuss the importance of respite care for caregivers, along with the critical importance of a team approach to supporting families. This is really important for families. It is sure to be a memorable and touching journey this evening. And so at this time, we'd like also to note that the event is being pre-recorded. For more than 30 years, CurePSP, a tremendous organization of wonderful people, has been the leading nonprofit advocacy organization focused on neurodegenerative diseases, the family of diseases that includes progressive supranuclear palsy, corticobasal degeneration, and multiple system atrophy, MSA, diseases which often affect a person during their most fulfilling and productive years. They're very, very sad diseases. Currently, there's no treatment or cure for these diseases that affect more than 60,000 persons in the United States. Since its founding in 1990, CurePSP has funded over 220 research projects and is the leading resource for information and support for researchers, doctors, allied health professionals, patients, and their families and caregivers. CurePSP and their volunteers work hard to raise awareness, build community, improve care, and through funding to find cures. We invite all of you to be a part of this common effort. Tonight's goal is to raise $50,000 for the Sherry Levian Quality of Life Fund. This important fund was launched in 2017 and since has provided professional caregiving services to 128 families totaling more than $200,000 for the care of those diagnosed PSP, CBD, or MSA. At last year's Hope as Big as Texas event, we were fortunate to raise funds to provide support to 40 families with PSP, CBD, or MSA, bringing the total at that time to over 100 families. Studies show that even a brief break or relief from caregiving responsibilities can improve the daily quality of life for caregivers and their loved ones living with the disease. According to the National Alliance for Caregiving and AARP, 83% of caregivers in high care burden situations are more likely to seek help. The American Society of Aging notes that 51% of Hispanic and Latinx caregivers are the sole caregivers for their loved ones, placing them at higher risk of isolation and mental health strain. The critical nature of these services is so clear, and CurePSP, with your support, can be there to help. We hope to create and grow sustainability of the respite care program to allow support for 50 families or more each year. Each grant provides about $1,500, enough for professional caregiving hours, 54 hours, through CurePSP's partner Griswold Home Care or an alternative home care agency. The type of in-home care funded by these grants is most often not covered by insurance, so costs are usually exceedingly burdensome for a family. In the advanced stages of these diseases, patients require around-the-clock care. So the Sherry Levian Quality of Life Fund is truly important. CurePSP is committed to providing in-home respite care and support through these grants to families of those diagnosed with PSP, CBD, or MSA. Studies show that these diseases affect all ethnicities equally. However, they are often underdiagnosed in rural and underserved areas that are without a movement disorders specialist, advanced medical care specifically tied to these diseases, and that is frequent in many parts of the country. As some of you may know, Dr. Pauline Cisneros-Paulette, my sister, passed from PSP. She was a brilliant scientist, headed a lab in vitro fertilization, helping families have children who had long given up on the idea that they would ever be able to expand their families. And she was a wonderful human being. We noticed symptoms of something we didn't know what it could possibly be: losing weight, nutritional issues, memory questions. And then it was very clear loss of balance and loss of control of some of her extremities. It was diagnosed as progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP. In her case, it went about 5 years, though she may have had it for a longer time before it was properly diagnosed. In any event, the family rallied around her. Indeed, I had a sister move from New Jersey to Texas to be her primary caregiver, and the rest of us did what we could to adjust our schedules and work with her around the clock. Still, it was exceedingly hard to watch the degeneration. A person who had been lively and clever and fun, suddenly living in a life of pain and great difficulty. And the end was a very difficult one. we noted the aspects of the disease and really went to work to try to help CurePSP identify ways in which funding and support research and so forth. And we also related to the other families, became an extended family of caregivers across the country, sharing ideas and thoughts. So we have been through this, and it's part of the reason why I am so supportive of CurePSP's mission and supportive of this fund, and why it is with great conviction that I encourage you to participate, to help if you can, because no one should have to suffer the way the victims of these degenerative diseases do, and no one should have to suffer the way caregivers do over a long span of time. We can help in finding research and cure, and we can also help by helping the caregivers. It's very, very important. So without delay, help if you possibly can. Enjoy this evening. It's an attempt to connect, as I said before, caregivers, persons working in this field, and artists, all of them enjoying creativity and commitment and showing this evening what's possible when people work together in a good cause.
Hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Peckham. I'm a movement disorder specialist that is in Round Rock, Texas. And what I'd like to do today is just talk about progressive supranuclear palsy and review what I feel like the role of the neurologist is. So basically, as a neurologist, I think there are three aspects of care when you're delivering care to patients with progressive supranuclear palsy. The first goal initially is going to be in making the diagnosis and in educating the patient and the family. So making the correct diagnosis is something that can be quite a challenge with PSP. In many patients, it may take up to 2 years to reach an accurate diagnosis and may be very challenging at first. Many patients, when they present with Parkinson's symptoms, they may look like a typical patient, and it may take both progression of time and symptoms to establish the correct diagnosis. Once the diagnosis has been made, it's very important to educate the patient and the family again on the difference between typical and atypical Parkinson's, discussing the features that are appropriate for each, and if appropriate at that time, referring to the support groups just to get some outside support for the family and family members and friends. The second role of the neurologist is to give continued support for the patient and the family throughout their diagnosis and condition. And this is in many ways. There are no treatments for PSP, but oftentimes we do try a combination of a medication, carbidopa, levodopa. In some patients, they may find that this helps their symptoms. But one of the main goals is really to maximize the therapies. And this would include physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, swallowing therapy, and then cognitive therapy if needed. So there are many realms of therapy that we can work on. And I think it's important to treat the patient, treat all the symptoms that are involved with the patient. So we always think about PSP being primarily an issue of gait and balance. And again, you're going to focus on therapy with your physical therapist, and at the appropriate time, using additional aids such as a cane or a walker. Additionally, swallowing can be an issue with PSP patients, so we focus on speech therapy and swallowing therapy, and if needed, further workup with either a modified barium swallow study, adjusting the diet appropriately. Next is constipation. This is an aspect of all forms of Parkinsonism, very, very commonly seen. So making sure that we're treating constipation appropriately. Next is medication, and this can be done both cognitive therapy and by using appropriate medications. Next is anxiety and depression, and it's important to potentially have as part of your team a psychiatrist and or psychologist for counseling and make sure we're treating the whole patient. Eye issues can be a big feature of PSP, and so oftentimes we do refer to an ophthalmologist or an optometrist to help with visual issues and to try and maximize that benefit. And then last, I would mention alternative therapies. Sometimes music therapy, acupuncture, chiropractic treatments, there are other therapies available, alternative therapies that may significantly add to the quality of life for the patient. And then last, I think the third role of the neurologist is, and this is a really tough one, but transitioning sometimes from active support where we were pushing full court press through therapies and other modalities. There's always a time when you transition to comfort care. This is a really hard transition. It's hard for your neurologist, it's hard for the patient, for the families. And I think it's important to find the right timing for this. But palliative care and hospice can really enhance the quality, especially for end-of-life measures, and making sure that the patient and the family have their end-of-life wishes appropriately valued and carried out in the way that they want them done. This also offers emotional support for the family, and I think that's really critical because this is a team condition for everybody who's going through it. And I'd just like to end by saying that there's a unifying theme in treating patients with progressive supranuclear palsy, and that is to focus on the best quality of life for the patient, family, and friends at all stages. That starts with accurately educating everyone, referring to support groups in the beginning and mid stages, focusing on independence and maximizing treatment, and then at the final stages, transitioning to palliative care and hospice. Thank you for having me today for this video. I appreciate the time and hope that this was helpful.
Hello again, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the event so far. Have you picked out a favorite silent auction item? Let us know in the chat. We've had some really good speakers so far, and we have another one right now. Our next presenter is Guillermo Nicolas. He is on the executive committee of the Texas Cultural Trust and is the past chairman of the San Antonio Arts Commission, is currently the president of the 3N Group. His father was Emilio Nicolas Sr., the founder of Univision, and he had progressive supranuclear palsy. Guillermo was also his father's caregiver, so he too understands firsthand the difficulties that caregivers confront in this community of persons caring for persons with PSP. He is a man of deep empathy and great responsibility, and his insights, I think, will be important and valuable to you. This time, please welcome Guillermo Nicolas.
My father was born in Rosita, Coahuila, Mexico, and his father decided that he needed to send his son to San Antonio to seek his education and his fortune. My father went to St. Mary's University and Trinity University for his graduate degree. He became a biologist for Southwest Research Foundation. And shortly after, he met my mother, fell in love, and they married. And while they were married, he decided that he needed to get into other businesses, and he liked the idea of broadcasting. My grandfather asked him to please come help him at his newly opened television station, Channel 41 KCOR. And it was the first UHF channel in the United States. And my father found the broadcasting business fascinating. He was a cameraman, a director, a producer, and Eventually, my father and his business partners bought the television station from my grandfather, and Spanish International Network was born. San Antonio was always the center of operation for the network. And Dad was very passionate and felt that broadcasting was a platform to advance Latino causes and to advance Latinos' lives. He felt strongly that without Univision, our development and growth as a people would have lagged behind. It opened doors to millions of Hispanics. It grew thousands of ancillary businesses. And with that, he also began to add stations from San Antonio to Los Angeles to New York and everywhere in between. And in the early 70s, Spanish International Network became the first satellite interconnected television network in the country. A full year before Ted Turner's CNN went on the air. It was, the original station was the first UHF channel, and there were many firsts. So he was very proud of the business. He was very focused on entertaining the public, but also educating the public. And in the early days, they made sure that they taught the viewers how to access their Social Security benefits or other benefits that they were not taking advantage of. So he was very focused on helping the public. He felt that the airwaves belonged to the people, and he made sure that they were benefited by them. So Dad started to slow down. He was falling. Dad loved working at his ranch in Johnson City. He was passionate about walking, about staying physically fit. He was a slight man, but he was very careful about what he put into his body. He ate carefully. He exercised and even stayed out of the sun or wore a big ranch hat. And so ironically, for him to start falling and to start walking slower and not being quite himself, we started to worry, Mom and I did. And we decided that maybe he needed to go see a neurologist. And the first two neurologists said he was fine. And that, to be honest, alarmed us more than anything because we knew something was wrong. We're not doctors, but we know who Dad was, and we knew this wasn't right. And so we went to a third and a fourth neurologist, and those two said he had Parkinson's. But because Dad was a scientist and because he was a voracious reader, he went online and he read everything there was to read about Parkinson's, and some things just didn't jive. Some things did, some things didn't. And so we went to a fifth neurologist who then diagnosed him with PSP. So PSP reared its ugly head. We didn't have any idea what that was, had never heard of it. And so Dad dove in and started to research as he liked to do. We went to another doctor at Mayo Clinic in Phoenix who confirmed the San Antonio doctor's diagnosis. And that was very difficult for Dad because it meant it was real. And he knew the progression of this disease because he had read up on it. And so a little bit of denial, depression, anger all set in. over a period of time, and eventually acceptance. My father was a lovely gentleman who was a very devout Catholic, and he felt that if this was going to be his end, that he would accept it graciously. And he did. At one point, when he became fully bedridden, it was very funny. His vanity towards his house that he and Mom had built wouldn't allow me to put in an elevator or even a chair lift because he didn't want holes in his marble steps, which I thought was very funny. But at one point, he was on the second floor, and I had to move my mother to the first floor because she was not well. She suffered from a heart murmur, and that really was hard on them because I've never seen a more in love, loving couple. And towards the end of Dad's life, his last 6 months, as it turned out, I moved them to a one-level condominium. And I have to say that that alone made him so tremendously happy because he could see Mom every day, multiple times a day. She was happy and he was happy, and they were together. I'd like to also say that we had some of the most wonderful caregivers. It took me a long time to talk them into allowing caregivers into their home because they really felt that they could handle this with me. And I was running a business and juggling Mom and Dad's health issues, and it was very overwhelming. But with a few fights and a few struggles, we hired a team of 7 caregivers that were so loving and professional and kind. And helped make Dad's life better than it would have been without them. So I would like to say that I hope you will consider funding the respite care program. I think it is such an important and valuable program for the families who are taking care of people with PSP loved ones. I know that I certainly am proud to support it and to help fund it in a small way. And I'd like to end with some hope and some positivity. I think Dad was very grateful to have the time to be with his family, to see how loved he was. And how well taken care of he was. And damn it, I wish he'd been at his funeral. He was at his funeral. I wish he could have seen his funeral. Univision televised it nationally, live. They gave him such a wonderful, warm goodbye that I want to thank them as well, because he had been retired for many years, but they still loved him and they still remembered him, and they appreciate his contributions. Without Emilio Nicholas Sr., there may not have been a Univision today. And so just think about all of the wonderful things your loved ones have done for the world and what the world would have been like without them. So Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for being part of this, for being so loving, and for being so generous. Good night.
I'm Emily Ann. I'm a dual degree medical student at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm currently earning my MD at Dell Medical School, and last year I completed my MA in Design focused in health at the Design Institute for Health. This year, I'm a Design Thinking Health Fellow at the global architecture firm HKS. Previously, I studied at the University of California, San Diego, and hold a BS in Physiology and Neuroscience and an MS in Biology. I completed my master's thesis in the field of neuroscience at the Sanford Consortium for Regenerative Medicine in La Jolla, California. My interest in neuroscience grew in college while in San Diego when I became peer mentor to individuals with learning differences, including some young adults who have Down syndrome. We quickly connected over art, and so some preferred communicating non-verbally, and we used Crayola marker scribbles, and that just worked just fine. Over time, I quickly learned that Down syndrome is associated with a neurodegenerative disease called Alzheimer's disease. And so I spent some time working with individuals with memory impairment, and ultimately began working in a lab doing research to further our understanding of learning and memory. And as a volunteer, we actually spent time with patients and aided in art therapy wherever we could, kind of like what we did with the students. So even doing simple things like watercolor in the community room or doing origami with the patients really sparked fond memories of the past. I remember one woman, she wanted to make an origami blue whale because she had a Ford Mustang that she had in the past that she had loved. And that was a nice memory that we could share through art. And it was also during an enrichment course that I took last year called Aesthetics of Health that I was reminded of the importance of respite care during these situations. So Aesthetics of Health is a brand new partnership between the Fine Arts Department at UT and Livestrong Cancer Institute, which is a cancer clinic. Every single week, we had the privilege of talking with patients and their families. And I was in a class full of studio art students, and I caught a glimpse into the more human side of healthcare. Unlike the questions that I, as a medical student, usually ask, like, what is your pain like from a scale from 1 to 10? How does it feel? How's your balance? Any falls lately? Instead, using art in these hour-long sessions, we did a lot of listening. We focused on their stories and their experience as we drew portraits of them in real time. There we were, roughly 20 of us students, each drawing a patient portrait as they freely told their story, however which way felt most authentic to them. We learned about them running marathons, whatever their favorite cookie recipe was, and perhaps most poignantly, there was a theme of someone in their lives taking on the role of caregiver. And I distinctly remember a point in one of our patient portrait sessions where our patient, who is very well composed for the majority of the session, became a little emotional at one point of the conversation. It was not when she recounted the moment of diagnosis. It was not thinking about her future. It was instead thinking about how her family member had given up so much to be her caregiver. And all too often, caregivers aren't professionally trained. They're loved ones who have given up so much of their time to care for their family member or dear friend. And caregiving doesn't end at the end of a workday. It's round the clock, physically, mentally demanding, especially for things like neurological disease, where it's usually decline over time. So respite care means that someone can step in so that the caregiver has a moment to themselves, they can run an errand or just take pause. All in all, it is so obvious that your donation to support respite care for caregivers for patients with progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP, corticobasal degeneration, CBD, and multiple system atrophy, MSA, can go such a long way for the caregivers and for patients, and we appreciate you taking time out of your day to tune in. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, for your participation today. Good luck with your studies at Dell Medical School. My name is Crystal Diaz. I'm CurePSP Executive Director and Chief Science Officer. I hope you are all enjoying this evening. Thank you for joining us for Hope as Big as Texas, a celebration of Hispanic heritage and hope. Before we continue with this program, let me share some updates about CurePSP. We are a team of 11 dedicated employees, soon to be 15. I'm mentioning this growth from the get-go because it means our impact and the reach of our mission are increasing. We're all proud of the work and dedication to those we serve, and we're looking forward to doing more to support our community nationally and doing more to fund important research all around the world. We recently updated our mission to clearly underline our renewed focus and drive. Our mission is to raise awareness, build community, improve care, and find a cure for PSP, CBD, and MSA. Everything we do at CurePSP is meant to advance our mission and to be able to measure our progress so we know we're making a difference. Community is an important focus and drive for our work and our team. CurePSP is a unique charitable foundation. For 32 years now, we've been almost exclusively supported by the generosity and trust of those that are living with PSP, CBD, and MSA, and their friends and families. And we work hard to give back. How do we give back? Let me tell you a little bit about our three pillars that are supporting our mission: care, consciousness, and cure. In a nutshell, we work hard to support all aspects of what is important to make a difference in the short term and in the long term for our community. Affected families should be able to get information on what they are going through. They should be able to get help caring for their loved one. And they should be able to find the right doctor faster. And a larger portion of the public and medical professionals that are treating these patients should be aware of PSP, CBD, and MSA. To make sure our efforts and progress benefit all those in need, regardless of their nationality, races, sexual orientation, gender identities, or belief, we work hard to increase a more equitable access to our services and information important to families living with PSP, CBD, and MSA. We also work hard to make sure a more diverse population is aware of new clinical trials opportunity. One step CurePSP is taking to improve equity and inclusion in our services is to work closely with our 28 CurePSP centers of care. With them, we are funding studies and projects that aim to understand and address disparities in access to care and information. In parallel, we are in the process of translating our disease-specific informational documents in Spanish and French, and we will make sure that we distribute them to all our centers of care. This will allow for greater access to relevant information. To learn more about our commitment to improving diversity, equity, and inclusion, you can visit our website at psp.org/DEI. Also related to our cure pillar, we do our best to fund the right research projects, and we organize and promote powerful partnerships to be a catalyst for a cure. I am a scientist, and I'm always staying updated on the scientific progress relevant to our mission. It's clear that there is an acceleration in the efficiency and outcome of neuroscience and technology. At CurePSP, we want to make sure that this progress also brings more hope and more solutions to our community living with PSP, CBD, and MSA. And we couldn't do any of that without you. What brings us together today is our care pillar, and more specifically, our effort at CurePSP to provide respite to caregivers. This effort was enabled by the Sherry Levian Quality of Life Fund that was launched in 2017. Since then, CurePSP has enabled professional support for 128 families across the United States, totaling more than $200,000 towards helping with the cost and necessity of in-home care services for those living with PSP, CBD, and MSA. Our honorary chair, Mr. Henry Cisneros, has already told you a lot about this program. We are proud of it, and we thank you all for joining us today and supporting it. Importantly, thank you for helping us create a long-term and sustainable effort. We're thrilled to know that we can continue to help hundreds of families in the future. I'm committed to increase the numbers of grants we distribute over the years, and we can only do that thanks to you, our supporters. I hope we'll do many more of these gatherings in the future, and I hope they will happen in person so I can meet you all. Feel free to reach out directly to me if you have any questions or suggestions. Thank you. Now for our next segment, I'd like to welcome a fantastic group from Texas who's been celebrating the Baile Folklorico tradition. Welcome to the Chewy Chacon and the Baile Folklorico.
Hello, my name is Angela Torres, and I'm the social worker for the Glenn Biggs Institute for Alzheimer's and Neurodegenerative Diseases at UT Health in San Antonio, Texas. As a social worker, I work in our clinic alongside our neurologists and neuropsychologists who evaluate and treat patients diagnosed with dementia or other neurodegenerative diseases, such as PSP, CBD, and MSA. The team at CurePSP asked me to provide a brief overview of the role of a medical social worker. I will also discuss resources that might be helpful to consider as you and your care partner navigate complexities in our healthcare system. So on our first slide, we'll discuss the role of the social worker. Most social workers focus on supporting and advocating for all families and care partners. We will assess a patient's social, emotional, environmental, financial, and support needs. Social workers assist patients and their families navigating different psychosocial challenges that come with serious illnesses and degenerative disease processes. We work with the patient's family, support systems, and service provider agencies to develop a plan for the care of the patient in home or other living arrangements. We navigate and access healthcare resources. We help advocate for patients and family members to other healthcare professionals and outside agencies. Social workers provide education and guide the patient and families in areas such as finance, advanced directives, available state and federal funding, and future planning. Lastly, we assist with facilitating care options in home or in facilities. On our next slide, we're going to discuss a little bit about how does a social worker help support caregivers? One of the things that we do is provide psychoeducation about disease processes. For example, if a patient's experiencing problems with mobility and swallowing, consider asking for referrals to home health or outpatient physical therapy and speech therapy. I've also included a couple of guidebooks specifically from the PSP website that provides a psychoeducation and information about the disease processes. We also recommend having discussions about ambiguous loss and anticipatory grief. Social workers facilitate support groups. We make referrals to counseling services, either within our clinic or to outside entities. We also discuss respite care options. So resource finding, one of the first things that I recommend to all of our patients is to contact your local area agency on aging. I will provide more information on the next slide about local area agency on aging and what they accomplish in each county. We recommend support groups, both for patients and care partners. There's many support groups that are available both virtually and in person, depending on what part of the country you're living in. In-home care options and facility options are often a question that many patients and care partners ask. Social workers can help provide information about both of those different options. And lastly, adult day centers for social engagement opportunities is also an important resource to discuss. So finding support, many people will ask, how do you find support? Where do I start? Who do I contact? I often recommend that you start by contacting your medical team to inquire if there is a medical social worker on your team. Many neurology offices do have a specialty medical social worker that you could contact. If your team doesn't have a medical social worker, you can consider contacting a geriatric care manager. Geriatric care managers are often social workers or registered nurses that can provide information and education and support to our patients and care partners. I will have a list and a hyperlink on the PowerPoint presentation that you will receive after this conference so that you can search and locate a geriatric care manager in your county. I discuss senior living placement specialists who can also provide assistance with hiring in-home care, but also locating a facility option such as assisted living, memory care, or even independent living settings. My other recommendation I make to everybody is to contact your village. Who is your village? Is that your family, your friends, colleagues, church members, neighbors, etc.? And then become familiar with your local services and support which will be helpful in your journey as a caregiver. So continue with finding support services. I recommend contacting your local area agency on aging. Most agencies have several programs that provide information, assistance, and sometimes even federally funded grants available for the following items: home care services and temporary respite care, home meal delivery options, often heard of as Meals on Wheels, prescription assistance, medical equipment and personal care supplies such as incontinence supplies, support with utility assistance, transportation services in your area, advanced directives, and simple legal planning. So to find your local area agency on aging, you can click on the link when you receive this PowerPoint presentation. You can also Google Area Agency on Aging and search for your specific state and county. Other resources to consider include the following: associations specific to the disease process, such as CurePSP and NORD, which is the National Organization for Rare Diseases. Home safety evaluations and modifications can be completed by an occupational therapist in a home health setting. Your physician can write orders for a home health evaluation to complete a home safety evaluation. Workplace accommodations can be considered if you are still in the workforce and want to discuss with your Human Resources Department. The Social Security Disability website could also be helpful as you're navigating when to apply for disability benefits and what those disability benefits look like for you. Legal assistance can be helpful in planning advanced directives or estate planning for the future. Other resources to consider include exercise classes and videos, prescription drug programs, transportation, support groups, advanced directives, caregiver support programs, home rehabilitation and home health agencies, adaptive and mobility equipment, often known as durable medical equipment, respite care services, and hospice care services when that's appropriate at a different stage in the disease process. On this last slide, I like to discuss the CurePSP Quality of Life Respite Grant. The Sherry Levian Quality of Life Fund was created to provide direct support to those living with PSP, CBD, or MSA. This is a $1,500 grant to be used for professional in-home care services. This fund offers family care partners with an opportunity for respite with the peace of mind knowing their loved one with PSP, CBD, or MSA has the care that they need during that time. There are grant application deadlines of January 31st, April 30th, July 31st, and October 31st. You can find more information on the PSP website, or you can click on the link when this PowerPoint is provided to you. This last slide includes the website of the Glenn Biggs Institute for Alzheimer's and Neurodegenerative Diseases. This concludes the social work presentation. I appreciate the opportunity speaking with you today. For further information about the Glenn Biggs Institute for Alzheimer's and Neurodegenerative Diseases at UT Health, you can click on our website or go to biggsinstitute.org. Thank you.
Hello again. I hope you're enjoying the program so far. It's my pleasure to introduce the next segment of our evening. A few months ago, we reached an important milestone for CurePSP and most importantly for our community. We distributed 100 respite grants thanks to the Sherry Levian Quality of Life Fund. The best way to tell you about the importance of this program and this milestone is to hear directly from Eileen McFarland, CurePSP longtime supporter and board member, who's been a strong advocate for the respite program, and also to hear directly from the family that have received these respite grants. I've talked to many families since I've joined CurePSP in 2020, and the main point is that even a few hours of help, of respite, each month matters for many aspects of their lives. Importantly, this opportunity to take a break and recharge is helpful to the mental health of the primary caregiver. We're proud to support such an initiative. Please pay attention to these stories. I hope they will clearly illustrate why this program matters and why it's important we support and grow this program for the long term. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eileen McFarland. In 2012, I lost my husband to PSP. During his 7-year journey, I was his sole caregiver with little resources to hire professional caregivers. I know all too well the challenges of caring for a loved one with PSP, CBD, or MSA. After my husband's death, I volunteered for the CurePSP Foundation and currently serve as the chairperson for the Sherry Levian Quality of Life Respite Fund. CurePSP created the Sherry Levian Quality of Life Respite Fund to provide grants of $1,500 to families facing a diagnosis of PSP, CBD, or MSA to help ease the financial burden of getting professional in-home respite care. We have just reached a major milestone of serving over 100 families through this program. In recognition of this achievement, I would like to introduce to you some of the families who receive support from these grants so that we can hear in their own words what this respite grant meant to them. Thank you.
Chris and I are empty nesters, and therefore I'm his primary caregiver. I also work full-time. Receiving this grant allowed me to bring in extra caregiving for me to go into the office more, or sometimes just to run errands or just have a little time to myself over a period of about 13 weeks. Thank you so much.
I would say that this CurePSP grant we received last year was extremely helpful. It's like a blessing to us. My dad is himself having many health problem and he's 76 years old. He is the main caregiver for my mom, and my sister help him here and there. This grant we use in over the weekend whenever my dad has to have some downtime, he has to go somewhere. My sister is her own catering business and she is trying to help them as much as can, but this grant hours really help my sister and my dad to keep my mom home and give her good home care.
Thank you all for attending our event today. We hope you learned a lot, that you are inspired to learn more, and to stay connected with CurePSP and its community. Raising awareness is part of our mission. It's a difficult task and every bit helps. So please, in the coming days or weeks, talk to your neighbors, friends, and family about our community. Let people know about PSP, CBD, and MSA and what these diseases are. Let people know about CurePSP and our mission and programs, including our respite grants. Let them know that we are a national charity, that we help and support family in the entire United States. Thank you for your attention today, and thank you for joining Hope as Big as Texas, a celebration of Hispanic heritage and hope. I wish everyone a good evening. And now, to close the evening, join me in welcoming our honorary chair, Mr. Henry Cisneros.
Hello again, and thank you again for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoyed tonight's event. I want to thank all of those who organized the event, and specifically want to thank those who were part of the 100 families testimonials who spoke about the Sherry Levian Quality of Life Fund. We greatly appreciate you taking time to tell us your story and for being an important part of CurePSP's mission. The raising of those $50,000 is very important. Please continue to remember the fund and the role it plays, and be generous in your contributions. Before leaving us tonight, let's not forget to support CurePSP over the span of the year by making a gift if you can. It's a great way to have an immediate impact on the lives of caregivers and patients almost immediately by helping to prevent caregiver burnout. We know that one of the saddest aspects of these diseases, apart from the impact on the person who is suffering, is the ripple effect on the family, the lives of others, and particularly those who are most directly the caregivers. We can help those people and do something significant in our society. We always welcome larger donations, but because we assist so many families, even modest donations go the distance. Here's your opportunity to raise awareness, build community, improve care, and find a cure. PSP, CBD, and MSA. I've been using the words tonight, the CurePSP community, but I really mean the CurePSP family. We have a bond between those of us who have watched our loved ones suffer with these diseases. And we have a bond with those who have gone through the extraordinary effort of providing loving care. Let's cement those family bonds and contribute generously so that this extended and unfortunately expanded family of people who are dealing with these questions can have support that we may have wished for at a time ourselves. Don't forget the silent auction, which will be closing shortly. So please check your bids. I hope you had a good time this evening. The organizers have done an extraordinary effort of trying to bring some fun into the moment and to create a climate, an environment in which we can all understand the urgency of this cause and be generous in our commitments. We look forward to seeing you again next year. Thank you.